We're gonna go on to the one I hate the most of this franchise, Nun 2. What's up, guys? So today we are here to rank all the Conjuring movies on a tier list. Now, the link will be in the description to a playlist that's gonna lead to the most recent Conjuring movies we've watched. I did a review of the Nun 2, I didn't react to it. We reacted to Conjuring 3, and we just recently reacted to La Llorona. Now that all the Conjuring movies we've already watched are done, I thought we might as well just give my little some thoughts about the other ones I've already watched my own time, like few years ago. Genuinely, how I think about this franchise, real quick of a sum up, I genuinely don't think it's great. There's a lot more movies that I hate than I actually like in this franchise, so this is gonna be a very interesting tier list. I found a tier list on the internet. This one has like everyone should do it like this at the top: good movies, sufficient with problems, and not horrible, very disappointing, and they shouldn't exist. So I already have in my head where I think most of these movies are gonna go. So without further ado, let's do it. I guess we'll start off from the first one, right? The first Conjuring. Everyone should do this. This is the best movie in this franchise by far. And honestly, to date, this is probably the scariest movie I've ever seen. I haven't had a movie jump scare me or scare me nearly as bad as this movie did. This movie scared me to death when it came out when I was a kid. I would have been like, 2012 this came out, so probably like 11, and this movie scared the shit out of me, dude. And years later I decided to rewatch it because I got all of them on DVD, and then I watched it again. Scared me the same way it did years ago, not nearly as like, oh, I'm scared of everything that's like the dark and stuff like that, but like all the jump scares still got me. They're still pretty effective. And even the cast, the people who were cast as the Warrens, I thought were great casting. They're by far some of the strongest characters in this franchise, and those are the characters you go to for all these Conjuring movies, and the highlight of most of these movies they're in. Jump scares were done well. I thought the acting was done well. Just a great movie. I don't really have any problems with this movie from what I've watched. I thought, you know, James Wan did this great. It's kind of like what he was trying to do with Insidious, but did it 10 times better with The Conjuring. I think The Conjuring is way better than Insidious, like in that sense with the scariness and whatnot. Now we're gonna go, I think The Conjuring 2 was next when it came out, I believe. I could be wrong, but The Conjuring 2, everyone should do it. I mean, I think, you know what, everyone should do it like this, because genuinely, I really like it. I still really like this movie. It's about on the same level. One of the things I wish that we could have gotten, I think a little bit more of the Amityville at the beginning would have been cool. But besides that, this was the first time watch for me this year, which most of this franchise was the first time watch for me. I think introducing the new family, them being skeptical about, you know, what's going on with this house and whatnot. Even adding in the nun in this, which obviously they flopped hard with what they've done with that character. But the introduction with the nun in this is so unnerving and creepy, and even it being added in last second was really cool. Adding in this little subplot throughout the movie, Lorraine seeing what she saw in this dude's eyes, I think it was in the first movie, and it was seeing, I can't remember who Patrick Wilson plays, but her husband getting killed by the nun. I don't know. I just genuinely like this movie. I genuinely liked everything they introduced. They didn't follow it up well, but this is just another solid, good James Gunn movie. I haven't watched the movie in probably a good year or so, but I remember enjoying it. It's a little bit hazy of what I can remember of what happened in it, but it's always interesting seeing like the Warrens being in a sense of like, you know, like concerned if it's a hoax or not. Like, you know, they're just fucking with them because, I mean, as much as they see, I can imagine them seeing that a lot. So I feel like the jump scares aren't as strong as the first movie, but that's why it's a little under the first movie. But besides that, still a solid movie. I think Annabelle came right after this, and I would say not horrible, but very disappointing. Is this the worst movie ever? No. But is this movie boring? Absolutely. I just think it's a very disappointing drop off from when you get these Conjuring movies and then you get Annabelle, which was, I watched parts of it years ago when it came out, but then I watched the full thing like last year when I binged all these movies, and yeah, it's just not good. This movie is just Don't get me wrong, the whole story behind it is scary as fuck, and that's what scared me the most about this series when I was a kid, is this whole like the realistic element of like Annabelle actually exists, and you know, the Conjuring stuff actually happening and whatnot, and then obviously none doesn't exist, but it always unnerved me. And I think the concept of Annabelle is fucked. It's just kind of just like a boring haunted house movie. I think what next was just an Annabelle movie right afterwards, which I think Annabelle Comes Home was next. I think it's just I would say good movies. I would say it's in this little tier right here, because this, out of all these movies, this was just not the greatest, but I think this movie is most watchable out of everything besides the first two Conjuring, and then Annabelle Comes Home. Because Annabelle Comes Home, I think, is a very interesting prequel. I think they did it very well. I think some of the scenes are super unnerving, and the backstory they gave, I thought was just very interesting. Even those like kills and stuff like that, especially where, you know, he's bending the fingers back and shit like that. I just think this is a good prequel. And as much as me as not being a fan of like movie prequels and stuff like that, because I feel like it fucks up a lot and it's a lot of stuff that just like I don't care about. But this is one of those times where it was like, oh, this is actually an interesting prequel. I don't think it's great with the Conjurings and stuff like that, but I think it's just like right away under that. I believe what came next was The Nun. I'm debating between not horrible but very disappointing. No, it is pretty bad though. I don't like this movie. I really don't like this movie. I'm gonna put it in this. They shouldn't exist. No, I have a special spot for that. We're gonna put The Nun right there. And not horrible but very disappointing. Because I don't like this movie. I would rather watch Annabelle than watch this movie. This movie was so frustrating to watch after I saw The Conjuring 2. The Conjuring 2, I thought they did great with The Nun, right? The makeup, the effects, everything I thought was great. But then The Nun happens, and it's like, what the fuck happened? Why did you guys fuck this up? People just walk around, something happens, and then they keep going. It's just that over and over again. Like the amount of times in like the third act or something like that, not the third act, like middle spot, it's just cutting back and forth this dude in the library and this girl walking throughout the hallway, and it's just, oh, something scary happens, goes back to him, something scary happens, he still goes back to reading. And it's just, there's just a point where it's just like, dude, there's no way you're staying in there at this point just to go face these things. It's just, I get there's supposed to be an unbelievable fact of like why these people go investigating stuff like that, but there's a certain point where it's just like in this movie when it, like so much stuff keeps happening like that where it's fucked up. I just don't buy the fact that they just keep going throughout this whole movie, going throughout this castle and stuff like that, and not having the instinct to leave. I just don't get it. But besides that, this movie's just, it's just bland. It's just a bland movie. I did not enjoy watching this movie whatsoever. I think the next one that came out was Annabelle Comes Home. Now, Annabelle Comes Home is probably just gonna go sufficient with problems. I didn't have like the worst time with it, but at the same time, it is just a generic haunted house movie. But the Warrens save it a little bit. So the Warrens are up there. That's another thing. If you bring me the Warrens, I'm gonna enjoy the movie to some degree. I just think the way this happened and the dumb decisions that are made in this, I just feel like we're just so reachy. Like her getting what causes the whole problems of the movie. I just felt like, I don't know. It just didn't make sense to me. It felt like to a degree where it's like, I can get with some dumbness of characters doing in movies, but this felt like, dude, what the fuck? I just couldn't buy the fact of how this movie kicked off and stuff like that. There's some awkward humor throughout this movie. It's definitely one of those movies where it's just a bunch of like, there's no lights on in the house. It's just a bunch of stuff popping out for like a few hours, stuff like that. It's literally just like a haunted house ride, and everything like, you know, popped up with like I think it was like a wolf or something like that, and like little characters. It's obvious they're trying to set stuff up for other movies. I don't mind if they set stuff up with other movies, but it's just with certain cases like this, like I think The Conjuring done well with like the Nun, setting up the Nun, right? They did it great with that. But then with this, it just felt like it was just kind of just pushed in. I don't know. This movie's just kind of just okay. It's entertaining enough. The characters and stuff like that are in it. I think the characters who are in this movie are entertaining enough to watch. But that's why I put it over like Annabelle the Nun, because I generally don't think the characters are interesting enough to watch. But yeah, it has its problems. But we're gonna go to the next one. I think The Conjuring or La Llorona or The Conjuring came out next. I actually don't know. I think it's the La Llorona that came out next. I think. So La Llorona is gonna go with sufficient both problems, but I put it over Annabelle Comes Home. I thought this movie was okay. It's at the top of sufficient both problems, right? I wouldn't say it's a good movie, but it's sufficient with problems. Like, I got entertained enough through this movie, right? I heard so many like things about how boring this movie is, but it's a haunted house movie. It's okay. I think the characters do well in this. I think the creepy aspect of the kids and whatnot. I think the whole story going with the mother and stuff like that. I think all that factor makes the movie entertaining enough. Especially you get like Tuco from Breaking Bad in this. I thought it was really cool to see him act in this movie, him being a different role. It was interesting to see that. I think things like that put this movie up a little bit more. The characters were way more enjoyable than Annabelle Comes Home. Annabelle and the Nun, I feel like the characters are just way better in this movie. That's what puts this movie up there for me. And like I said, is it great? No. It's just an okay haunted house movie. I think the whole story of La Llorona is interesting as well, because I know it's like a Mexican urban legend and whatnot, and I've heard it a lot in the past. But I thought it was interesting to see it in movie form. I thought the makeup effect and everything like that on La Llorona itself was creepy. Some of the shot selection was creepy as well. And then the guy who made this and the last two movies that we're going to go talk about, I think this is the better of the movies. This is the one I was probably the most up on besides the other one. But it's definitely in the more upper area of movies I would rewatch this franchise. And now we're going to go into The Conjuring Devil Made Me Do It. It's going to be very disappointing. Obviously in the top, because I think the Warrens are great characters. But the problem is, it's such a drop-off from what The Conjuring 2, what The Conjuring 2 offered. This movie was not really interesting at all. Like I said, the Warrens themselves were great, but some of the acting in this movie was just, The movie looks great. Like, the dude who made these other three movies we're going to talk about, his movies look good. His movies look really good, and that's something I always give praise for it, but it's just, I was just not happy with this movie after I was done watching it. It just felt like we went for The Conjuring 2, and then we just plummeted again. It's like, what happened? It felt like this movie was missing something the whole entire time. I was just not into the story. I kind of felt like we were taking it all the way down. It was just okay. I mean, that's the best I can say. I saw some of it when it came out. I saw some of the trailers and whatnot. The trailers were everywhere. I think some of the concepts were interesting. The kid being possessed and, him going to court, and with the court system having to prove to the court system that he was possessed and whatnot. I thought that was different, interesting little story to put on. But besides that, everything else, just okay. We're gonna go on to the one I hate the most of this franchise, The Nun 2. And was not quiet on this either. If you want to see my review, it'll be in the link in the description on that playlist. But I gave a whole rant about this movie when it came out, because The Nun 2 made no sense. It made no sense to be in this franchise. The Nun, I'd rather watch than this, and that's saying a lot. Because, like, The Nun 2, it's just the first one. It's just The Nun 1 done again. This movie has no place to exist in here. It ends basically the same way the first one does. You could do this whole franchise again without that, and the franchise would be fine without this movie. This movie has no place. You could watch it without it, and this franchise is fine. It just makes no sense why this happened. And especially, like I said, like with the other ones, I genuinely felt like this movie looks nice. Like the third act looks nice. Genuinely felt that way. But besides that, everything else, I was just bored, because I'm just like, we already know all this. Like, we're going on this whole mystery to find out what's going on with Valak or whatever, right? Even though we know what happens, and this is the prequel problem, is we know what happens, and then Insidious Red Door had the same problem, right? They were just doing this thing where they were giving us answers to questions we already know about, and they do that the whole movie. It's like, why should I be watching this if I already know what happens? Like this, The Nun 2, I already know how it ends. Because I hated watching it. I almost fell asleep during this movie. It's just not interesting at all. The actors' acting was okay. I just felt like I was watching the same movie over again. If there's a movie in this franchise that you're redoing, basically, I'd rather pick the one that was done in the first place rather than the redone version that's just rehashing what that first version was doing anyways. I'd rather pick that first one, because at least the first one, it was organically done. Not with the second one, where it was forced to be done, if that makes sense. Like, this one felt forced to be done. Like, they had no other ideas rather than just doing it again. So, they had certain, like, actors, stuff like that coming to this that does well. It does okay. But it just felt like some of these actors were bored throughout this movie as well. It just felt pointless. I don't know. This movie is just frustrating. Like I said, if you want my full review, there's a review in the description of The Nun 2. But if you guys love the video, like, comment, subscribe. This is my list right here. Tell me your list in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys think is the best of this franchise. I haven't seen too many people disagree with this type of list. So I'm interested to see if you guys have any hot takes about what you guys do with this tier list, because I've seen people actually really like The Nun, which is interesting to me because I just found it boring. But yeah, if you guys love the video, like, comment, subscribe. Thank you guys for watching, and let's turn a little bit of a rant fest. Like I said, I'm not too big of a fan of this franchise, but yeah,